Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good to have everybody here. The PPIC meeting scheduled for 8 o'clock on Tuesday, October 22nd is, I have to do this?
You don't have to. That's
Hereby called to order. I want to welcome everyone here and good to have you as we start the last quarter of the year, calendar year anyway. And want to do a roll call?
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Barham.
Here.
Ms. Cherry. Mr. Peterman.
Here.
Mr. Reineberg.
Here.
Mr. Toops.
Here.
Mr. Wallace. Mr. Weaver.
Here.
We have a quorum.
And just for y'all to know, Mr. Wallace and Ms. Cherry both had told us ahead of time that they weren't going to be able to make it today, but we have a quorum. Minutes for, there's two sets. There's the September 17th, our meeting, and then there's a short set for the joint meeting. I call your attention to them. They were in the package, and if there's any corrections or suggestions, ask for that, or otherwise call for a motion.
Make a motion to accept. Second.
And that is for both sets of minutes?
Both sets.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
All right. Mr. Barham.
Yes.
Mr. Peterman.
Yes.
Mr. Reineberg.
Yes.
Mr. Toops.
Yes.
And Mr. Weaver.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, for financials, we actually have two things. We have the normal September financials, which are in your package, and we also have the audit from June 30th. And is this a good time to call them up and let them go?
Yes, so annually, as the chairman stated, we have the representatives from Cherry Beckert to come and work with finance and our department to audit you all's financials and the state of the board. So we have with us this morning Ms. Krista Edoff from Cherry Beckert, and she will present the audit.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I am pleased to be here today to present the results of the June 30, 2019 audit. You do have a copy of the financial statements along with a letter with some additional required information we're required to provide to you. I guess when we conduct our audit, we're required to test the significant balances and transactions that you see within these financial statements. In addition to testing those balances and transactions, we're also tasked with understanding the internal control environment to see where could things go wrong in recording these numbers and financials, and where could maybe fraud potentially exist. So we do gain that understanding of the control environment. We do not test the internal controls. We're not required to test those controls. However, in gaining that understanding, if any matters come to our attention where we feel there could be a deficiency in the control environment that could create an error or could allow for fraud, we are required to disclose that to you. In addition, under the Commonwealth of Virginia's Auditor of Public Accounts, we are required to test certain compliance with laws and regulations, such as compliance, how you're investing and holding your cash and investments, conflicts of interest. So those are just examples of some of the laws and regulations that we're required to test. And if any matters of non-compliance are identified in our testing, we have to report those to you as part of the audit. So it's not just an audit of the financial statements. It is a little more in depth than that.
Do you make recommendations?
We do make recommendations if we see some maybe best practices where you could probably do something better, but that's not really the ultimate design of the audit. But we do try to do that if we see where things could be better, or maybe see maybe a certain other localities doing something a certain way and we feel you could benefit from it. So we'll do make certain recommendations like that. Just to give you a brief rundown of the financials, I'm not going to go through the numbers. You do see those relatively on a monthly basis, but the financials are laid out really in three sections. The first section is management's discussion and analysis. That's really a summarized synopsis view of the financial statements, and it is presented in a comparative format, so you can see current year results to prior year results. Management does put some kind of highlights of what happened in the year, so I would encourage you just to read that section if you're not going to review the whole thing. And then there are the basic financial statements, which you're pretty accustomed to seeing on a fairly monthly basis. It does identify all the assets and liabilities that the commission does hold at a certain point in time. And then you'll have your statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balance, which shows the revenues and expenses on an accrual basis, not a cash basis. And then you will have your cash flow statements. Behind that really are the footnotes to the financials that just describe the accounting policies that the commission uses and then provide maybe a little bit additional information, more detailed information about the financial statements themselves. So that's really a layout of the financials that you see here. So to kind of get into the audit results, we have to be independent to conduct an audit. It's essentially like your conflicts of interest. It means there's no family relationships or financial interests or other bias that we would have that would cause us to give you an audit opinion ultimately that you didn't deserve. So we are independent of the commission and of the city of Portsmouth itself. In conducting our audit, we did not have any disagreements with management, and we did not have any difficulties in conducting our audit. Certain other matters, certain items in the financial statements really are not considered to be audited. So any of the introductory section and the supplemental schedules, they're providing additional information. Our audit is on what you see, the financial statements and the notes themselves. So when we conduct our audit, if we identify any journal entries that are required to make the financial statements to be correctly stated, we are required to disclose those to you. We did identify one journal entry this year. At year end, management had recorded a grants payable, and ultimately that customer or vendor had not met the requirements to receive that yet. So we did have them make that adjustment to remove that as of June 30 because it truly wasn't payable. They hadn't met the criteria at the time. So when we do find adjustments like that, we do consider that a weakness in internal control. We have talked to management about it. They do agree and understand and did make the correction. So we are required to bring that to your attention. Otherwise, it was a good audit. It was a clean audit. We did have an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. Additionally, we did not identify any non-compliance as a result of our testing of regulations and laws. And with that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
So I have a question.
Sure.
When I hear that we were tracking money could be paid out that shouldn't have been, can you elaborate on that, your finding there? And was that just an administrative error on a piece of paper?
Timing difference.
What's that?
So it's just an administrative timing difference, really. So it was reflected at year end. The customer hadn't quite met the criteria for it to be recorded. So it wasn't something that was paid. It was just an accounting accrual. So they recorded it at year end. It really shouldn't have been recorded at year end, just a timing difference.
Okay.
So.
We have that going on right now too, because we've got, the 180 that comes in and goes back out. When is the timing of when it should be recorded? And this was the 60 that was owed. We know we're going to owe it.
Right.
We wanted to show it because, okay, let's make sure we know what we got. But technically, they hadn't jumped through all the hoops to make it due. It's going to be due. It's just a matter, as of that point, it wasn't. So, because I was one of the ones saying, hey, we need to reflect these things.
No, I
And
remember that. I just, when I hear a finding and, I wanted to hear what
They had not
the
jumped
auditor
through all the
had come
hoops
up
they
with.
had to
Right.
technically make it there. It's still out there. We're going to owe
Right.
it.
Right. Yes,
Is
and,
that fair?
yes, and we took the most conservative approach, which we usually try to do in the financial statements. This time we got ahead of gap. So, but again, we tend to take the most conservative approach so that we know that when money is payable, that we've already got the money set aside.
No, I appreciate that. And my question was also kind of for the general audience
Right.
who doesn't have all this in front of them. So.
Right.
Any other questions? Thank you for presenting. We appreciate your time.
So we will need a vote to accept the audit.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the audit as is presented.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Other than that, I call for a vote.
Mr. Barron?
Yes.
Mr. Peterman?
Yes.
Mr. Reinerberg?
Yes.
Mr. Toops?
Yes.
And Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Motion carries.
We also have the September internal financials, if you want to spend a minute and go through those.
Yeah, good morning. Today I'm going to just go over a quick overview of September activity. As of September 30, total cash and temporary investment were $1,053,013. Other assets totaled $453,638. Total liability, which is due to city, totaled $806. Net position at September 30 was $1,505,854. For the income statement, the only activity were investment income, totaled $2,008. And on the last page of your package, we totaled the interest earning for the first quarter of FY20. The interest earning as of September totaled $6,147.
Yeah, thank you for that. You added
Okay.
that because we.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you. It's not too bad.
No, it's a big
It's really
difference from.
good, yeah. Very good.
So,
What's just amazing to me is that in all the audits we've had in past years, that an auditor didn't recommend we do what you recommended. As a,
What can I say?
yeah.
I just think of how much money the city passed up on, and how much richer the town bank is.
And it's also funny that on the financials, when I was reviewing them ahead of time, I had notes about, we've got the 180 that has to come in and go out, and then we've got the 60. But then I read the audit, and it's like, okay, we have to wait until it's actually there, because to me, I know they're out there, and in my mind, I want to see them, but we just know they're out there. It's just funny. So, all right, that is just filed
Filed and
for
started.
filed for audit, which you just saw. So, in terms of old business, the Port Houston Host Communities Grant update, and I think there's been some activity.
There has been. Good morning. Just want to give you a brief update on where we stand with the Port Host Community Revitalization Fund program. If you recall, in September, we submitted an application to the state for a project that the commission identified as being a priority in Portsmouth for redevelopment, and that was the former Cogentrix property at 1 Wild Duck Lane. Staff submitted the application to the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development on September 26th, and that is currently under review with the state. We have been informed that there are 2 of the other communities that have also submitted for this program. There are 5 communities in total. The other 2 are Newport News and Norfolk. So Richmond and Front Royal have not pursued the program. The application, again, is under review. We expect that will go to the governor's office for a final determination in November, and we should be aware of the results by the end of the month of November.
And if you could, quickly, Mr. Donahue, touch on the results being on the amount, because there's a certain minimum that we could receive, and then.
So we submitted an application requesting $500,000 for the demolition and redevelopment of that property. The minimum amount is $150,000 that can be requested. The maximum is $1 million, so our request was $500,000. We don't know what the other amounts requested are, but we think that given the fact that there's a pot of funds of $1 million split amongst 3 communities, we expect to at least get our 150, if not a bit more.
Cross our fingers. I mean,
Are there any other questions?
Just refresh my memory. So there was an in-kind reimbursement for that, I think, right? So the match was like was going to be done by the developer. If we get less than the 500, is it still going to continue?
So they will have to match the program. It is a matching grant, so they will match whatever amount we receive, and they would continue.
They're gonna still continue with the
It would
demo
change their
regardless.
financing structures is what would occur, but they will continue. In fact, they're in the process of obtaining permits for the demolition of the property as we speak.
Great.
Can I just ask a question? There's an article in last week's paper about this company, SRB Cos, got a grant from the state, $75K from the city of Virginia Beach, and now they're moving a warehouse from Tulsa, Oklahoma to Virginia Beach on Lynn Haven Parkway. Is that something that we just missed the boat on, or is it something that, we competed and lost? How does that work, since that seems to be coming from the same pot of money from the state? And again, my reference is the Virginian pilot.
So, to answer your question, Vice Chair, when it comes to projects as a whole, and certainly you will see projects that come up in the newspaper, such as that say Virginia Beach won this or was awarded this through the state. Much like the preferred freezer project, a project can start at the state level from a standpoint of the state is contacted. The state then looks at all the different regions, finds out where they would like to be. They come to the regional group. The regional group puts that information out to the localities. We submit sites, and we work it down that way. Sometimes they know where they want to be. And then it still gets down to, is there a financial incentive that can be provided from the locality or from the state? If something comes from the state, 9.5 out of 9 times, there's a match of some type by the locality. And Portsmouth is a little different because currently there is not a set aside by council or in the budget for a war chest, if you will, for monies for projects like that. So just like you all, that is coming out of you all's bank account, if you will, when you are matching preferred freezer and so forth. From our standpoint, there are projects that we have a competitive advantage on, and there are some that we don't. Some it comes down to strictly location, and others it's just a matter of they had the right building at the right time. That type of project was a mixture of the two. They kind of knew where they wanted to be. They've got some folks in that surrounding area that matched them, and at the same time, you had a situation to where that building was ready to go. We don't have a plethora of buildings per se that are in that, and I think that was not necessarily a large building. I forget the size of that building right off the top of my head. But our sweet spot is right at about 20 or 40,000 square feet. And for anybody that's watching on TV, we have larger buildings. But at the end of the day, that's kind of our sweet spot. We have that ready to go. What we are doing now, though, is looking at, from a redevelopment standpoint, are there opportunities to create or generate those larger buildings, much like a Cogentrix, so on and so forth. That's a roundabout way to say we're being competitive. Just sometimes we just don't have it. It has nothing to do with the incentive, but it has more to do with the product, what they're looking for, and where they want to be. Some folks, for example, Virginia Beach has steel. Some people just want to be right by steel.
Yeah. Well, the article kind of said they just wanted to be close to the Port Authority,
And so, and when you think about the land and the buildings that are available close to the Port Authority, you've got the BASF site. Again, that's a site, not a ready-to-go building. So that's kind of how you have to look at it. But I will tell you, staff, this body, EDA, council, have all been very successful this year in attracting new business and new investment into the city. I'm not going to go into the numbers because I don't want to steal the thunder from later meetings. But I will tell you, you all will be thoroughly impressed and excited. Just leave it at that.
Okay, well, when I read the article, I was thinking that we, the PPIC, are kind of reactive to what you bring forth. Mm-hmm. And I was just wondering if there's any way we can be a little bit more proactive as a body.
Well, that checkbook that you all have, no, I'm kidding. No, there are, when we come back, when we find the opportunities or see the opportunities, we bring them to you all. We do not hesitate in any way, shape, or form to bring you what we feel are opportunities, whether it is to acquire a piece of property or whether it is to redevelop a piece of property. We have to keep in mind, however, that you all are limited in the amount of funds you have. If you look at certainly what the financial state, there is some payout that you all still have to do through some things, as well as some other projects we'll talk about in later on this morning. But we certainly welcome any input that you all have as a board, and we certainly look forward to the opportunity to bring things to you like we have, so that you all can continue to assist us in this. We want to be more proactive, and we're glad that you all are willing to be that way.
Okay, thank you.
You know, to Ron's point, it may be good, obviously, we focus on the positive, what we're pursuing and what we've landed, but it might be a good idea to make us aware of what we passed on.
Yep.
And why, and share the criteria as to why it wasn't either a good fit or we didn't have the inventory of what they were looking for.
And we are tracking that, Councilman. That is something that we have started doing now that we have the Salesforce software, so we can track and we know every project that's come in. We know how we responded with what project, with what property, and at the same time, if we could not respond, why we could not respond. So we have everything from we didn't have the building, didn't have the land, they just didn't choose Hampton Roads. We have all of that because yes, we want to be able to understand what we're good at, where we're lacking, where we're deficient, and how can we build that portion of the portfolio up.
Terrific.
And more broadly, the meeting we had last month, where it was a joint meeting with economic development, and part of what we're talking about is how do we create more opportunities so that we do have more products, more shots on goal, so that we are at the table. And I mean, I'm complimentary of Mr. Moore and Mr. Donahue and the staff in that the amount of activity we've seen over the last year and a half. I mean, you know, keep running. I mean, we're in the game, and I'm in some other organizations where Portsmouth is now starting to get mentioned, where before it was with a chuckle, and now it's not. And so that's part of what we're doing, is that when it's discussed, we're part of the game. And sometimes we win, sometimes we don't, but we want to be in the game.
Certainly.
And that's shots on goal.
Certainly. Certainly.
Yeah. Well, because I really appreciate it, because, you know, when you read the article, it just looked like all we needed to do was invest $75K. It didn't say you needed to get $75K in a building.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and again, you know, a win is a win. And certainly there's a difference between quantity and quality. And while we have increased our quantity, we have certainly increased the quality of the wins that we have. Again, I point to the preferred freezer. I point to Cogentrix changing hands. And a lot of this, as you will see, is a domino effect. Because when you start seeing, when businesses see other people invest, then they want to understand, as you stated, what's going on in Portsmouth now that's different. What's going on in Portsmouth now that where should we be looking there? And what we're doing is taking that opportunity to reach not only locally, but we're doing outreach inside the region, outside of the region, outside of the state, to let folks know that we are here, and that close proximity to the port is very important for those certain companies. But again, you know, for every good move you make, there's certainly things you can work on. And some of those things that we are focusing on are where have we missed the boat. Some things we can't change just because of the nature of the business and where we are as a city. But others where we can be competitive, how can we increase our competitiveness as we go forward? So that's something that certainly we want to discuss come March, when we have our February, March, when we have our joint meeting, because I think that's a great time for everyone to talk about, here's the results, here's the data. Let's digest this and see how we can build upon that going forward.
Just a question. I wish Dr. Patton or someone, you know, from her office was here. I want to say it was a year and a half ago, we had talked about, you know, we're getting you and you know, EDA and us, we're getting the wins attracting these businesses. They're like, okay, we're coming there, they plant the flag. Mm-hmm. And then you just mentioned and made me think of it, you know, there's in your circles or your meetings, hey, there's no longer a chuck about Portsmouth. So, hey, they come plant the flag, but then where those issues could come back up again is if we can't get them through all of the internal permitting processes, if those cause major delays, we could do the greatest things in attracting them, but word's going to get out. Hey, they offer these incentives, but now gosh, we can't get the permits, we, delayed in construction, et cetera. So is there any move to kind of carve out a process for some of these major investors? And maybe this isn't the venue to talk about, but it's something that we brought it up before and that we should be considering.
Well, I'll say this. Again, this is probably more of a retreat kind of conversation. But council has asked before, I believe specifically on Councilman Moody, in our strategic plan, which we have recently updated, but in our strategic plan for the last 2 years that I've been director, we have had a desire to form a business assistance team. I'll take a step back and say that staff has worked to make sure that we are the concierge to move businesses through the process. We would like businesses, when they come down to City Hall, if they say, I want to open a business, we'd love for them to send them to us first.
And you just kind of
And we
walk
just
them
walk
through
them
everything.
through.
Exactly.
Certainly that means I'm going to ask for more staff at some point, but we'll save that for another conversation. But at the end of the day, that's what we'd like to do. Now, from a standpoint of the business assistance team, that's a step forward, step in a different direction, where it's not just economic development staff, but then it's someone specifically from planning, someone specifically from zoning, someone specifically from permitting, from the assessor's office, sitting down and let's say, here's the project, engineering, here's the project, here's what we want to get. How long is this process going to take? And it's an expedited process. There's some opportunities. Some localities charge for a process like that. That has been our recommendation. So it's in the works.
Okay, good.
But the other takeaway I'd like for you to have is that we're not just bringing in the new businesses, because we're not just cultivating the new businesses. We have to make sure that we are focusing on the existing businesses as well. That is the other side of the coin. And that's where the growth is coming from. The valuation that we are seeing right now from the building permits. And there's a difference between how much is invested from a building permit standpoint and what that value of that is from a city standpoint. That has been significant this year. Again, I'm not going to get into the numbers right in a second. But what we like to say is once you get here, open up, you are a new business, now you're open, you're an existing business, and we're here to help you continue to grow. We don't grow unless you grow. So, but again, that's a conversation from a process standpoint for another day, but we are addressing that, and we are working through that process.
Two very short comments on that. One, I think it's a compliment to Councilman Moody and Councilwoman Simmons. Every meeting we have somebody here. It's not that they're not here. And so there's a nice cooperation between and they're involved. And, Vice Chairman Peterman working with Norfolk Naval Shipyard in terms of what might be possible with the city's help. Our biggest employers, we have some very large employers here. We want to, and I know you're working with it to make sure they're happy because that's where growth comes from. A lot of the growth comes from existing businesses. And when I was first on this committee, Mr. Barnum probably remembers, we were very excited that we were getting a Chick-fil-A. And I remember going home and telling my wife at the end of the day is, we have a lot of room to make up when we're excited. I mean, it's wonderful, and that's a busy Chick-fil-A, but that was what we were excited about. And no disrespect to those in the past, we're hunting bigger game now. And, compliment to everybody because, but we were really excited about Chick-fil-A, and I went home that night and I said, oh my gosh. So thanks to everybody.
Yeah.
All right. New business?
So from a new business standpoint, I guess that's a good segue to talk about meetings. We are coming up on the holiday season, November and December, and certainly you all have the fourth Tuesday of every month. November, the meeting falls on the 26th of November, which is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and the December meeting falls on December 24th. Now, I have myself 2 smaller children, and Santa Claus is coming to town, and not to the PPIC, I don't think. I think certainly we've in the past not had a December meeting. The question really comes up for, and it will continue that if you all like. The question comes up for November, that Tuesday before, is a little tricky, just because certainly the city closes half a day on Wednesday. Some people travel, a lot of people travel on Tuesday. I don't know what the plans of the board would be. We don't have anything yet, because we try to do our agendas a couple months ahead of time, so we know what we're going to do, so we know if we need to cancel, we can cancel. Staff's recommendation would be that we cancel or not have a November and December meeting. However, should something arise where we need to have a called meeting between that November, December timeframe, we'll leave that possibility open.
And then it had been a previous discussion when we were prepping for the meeting, and when we need to, we can call a meeting. And y'all been very good about being available if need be. And, it's a little long to go without a meeting, but, our dates just stink in terms of the holidays. And, we don't want to have a meeting and nobody comes because it's right before the holiday. So if we keep a flexible approach and say that if we need to, we're going to call a meeting, otherwise we'll go to January.
No, I'm good with that. I'm all about not meeting if we don't have anything to meet.
I would like to have a meeting in November, simply because I finally got the shipyard to commit to a November, update on where we stand with Southgate. So if we can't do it on, the 26th, maybe we could find another date in November.
Why, if I could suggest, do you want to get with them and say, hey, can we do it a little bit earlier than the 26th? And if we have a called meeting, just check with everybody and see if we can get together. Just to keep that iron hot.
If you just tell me what date works, I'll make that happen.
That would be up to the group. I would say leave it on a Tuesday.
All 3 weeks.
Not the 19th.
Well, economic development.
Tuesday before is EDA,
The
right?
EDA is 19th, yeah. Well, you could do it afterwards. That's a long morning. But,
Is it possible to move it to a Monday?
we could do Monday.
What does that have to do with announcements and calendars and newspapers and all that? Doesn't it all have to be?
Still November, so we've got time. I agree with Commissioner Barham. We probably want to see what works for the shipyard first and back into it. That would be my suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no need for us to do all that arranging, and then we find out they're not available.
Correct.
Yeah, because right now they were planning on the 26th, so.
Let me say this. If you all decide that you would like to have a 26th, we can. Just want to be amenable to everyone's schedule. That's all.
Personally, I'm available the 26th, but
And I'm
it's
available
up to
as well.
everybody else.
As am I.
Well, we can just leave. We could leave.
Okay. Again, I'm in town too. Well, then why don't we just plan on, we'll do November.
No
I don't think anybody wants to be here Christmas Eve.
For sure. But if the shipyard is counting on us being here November 26th.
Yeah.
Just confirm
we have
that
a
because it
reason to
would.
be
Yeah, I will.
here, then I can certainly be here.
Okay.
So we'll just confirm that with us. And so we'll leave it as a 26th, same time, same place, same channel, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
All right, good feedback.
Good point, yeah.
All right.
Do you have a need to go into the close?
Hey, could I just, I know we're still on new business, but, we seem to have a lot of things that we've talked about and we made decisions about, but I guess I don't know the current status.
We'll come back to it.
We'll come back to
Again,
it?
well, no, again, let's do this, and I actually, from your note before, I want us to just summarize at the end.
Okay.
I just was gonna do this first.
Okay. I move to go into closed session pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711, A6, for the purpose of discussing or considering the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, where if made public initially, the financial interests of the government unit would be adversely affected, specifically regarding water delivery of facilities.
I'll second that.
So, Mr. Barham,
Yes.
Mr. Peterman,
Yes.
Mr. Reineberg,
Yes.
Mr. Toops,
Yes.
Mr. Weaver.
Yes.
We are in closed session.
I thought you were going to.
Mr. Barham,
Yes.
Mr. Peterman,
Yes.
Mr. Reineberg,
Yes.
Mr. Toops,
Yes.
Mr. Weaver.
Yes.
We are in open session.
before we do anything else, I'd like to ask the port system to essentially give us an update.
Yeah, thank you. Andrew Sinclair with the Port. I'm here in place of my colleagues Chris and Dustin, who normally represent us. Unfortunately, they're both traveling this week. Chris is in Boston at an offshore wind conference, so we're excited about the opportunities there. And Dustin's out in Charlottesville on some transportation matters. We had a very good September. So our September volumes were up 9% year over year. For fiscal year to date, 4% year over year. So we're continuing to see growth, which we're very happy about. And importantly, we're seeing that growth kind of in all categories: imports, exports, loaded containers, empty containers. So it's really strong that we're continuing to see that growth, and we're excited about that continuing through the end of the year. The other note that I'll make is our channel deepening project to deepen Norfolk Harbor Channel to 55 feet and then widen it in Thimble Shoal and step down as you get out to, is continuing to progress. So our board at their meeting in September approved a $78 million contract for the first element of that. Shortly thereafter, earlier this month, we were able to fully execute the contract with Weeks Marine. That work will start by January, and perhaps as soon as next month. So we're working through, and that'll be about a 5-year effort with several subsequent contracts for the different elements. But that's really moving forward very quickly, and we're excited about being able to continue to receive larger vessels, eliminate the constraints of one-way navigation based on the width of the channel going forward.
Would 55-foot be the deepest on the East Coast?
It will be, yeah. So we're currently at 50 feet. That is, as of right now, the deepest on the East Coast.
But some others are going to it.
Charleston is under construction, and they will reach 52 feet in the next couple years. But by the time they reach 52, we'll be on our way very close to hitting 55. So we'll probably give them about a couple years and then catch back up.
They'll sort back in.
Any questions? Thank you. Thanks for your patience. We went to closed session.
Absolutely.
We should have had you go before closed session. Sorry about that.
No worries. Last thing that I have is just a really quick overview on a couple of projects we have out there. If you don't mind giving an update. I mean, has Preferred's broken ground yet?
So Preferred has not broken ground. I will tell you that when we talk about the concierge standpoint, we have worked with the owner. Just that you understand that the property sold to one entity, then that entity sold to Preferred Freezer. That has closed. That has happened. We are working with them now on the demolition portion of the project to take this down. Certainly, the June 2020 deadline is probably not happening, but that had nothing to do with the city or staff. From a standpoint of it was getting to closing. You can understand that when you take a industrial development that has all types of tentacles, and what I mean by that, literally tentacles in the form of railroad crossings, railroad tracks, right-of-way, things of that nature. You have to make sure you have all those things in place and understand from a legal standpoint. These doggone attorneys want to make sure everything is right. But no, that has closed. That closed about 2 weeks ago. So we are now working with them on, and again, that site was subdivided, so we're working with them on the demolition portion and getting that permit through. They were also working with them on 2 additional projects on the remaining 16 acres.
That's great.
Okay. And then South Annex is what we're trying to do for next month.
Southgate.
I'm sorry, yeah, Southgate. Let me call it the right thing. Thank you. And can we discuss that?
We can discuss the property, not the prospect. Burns Point Road, we are still working through And we're really at the home stretch. Mr. Donahue, correct me if I'm wrong. We're really at the home stretch on that property and the EPA and getting the cleanup done. If you have not been out to the site, please go out to the site and see it. Your site, for the short amount of time you're going to have it, is
Drive on it? You like actually go up on it?
Not yet.
Not
so-
yet. I had to pause and hesitate for a second because we did drive up on one, but I know we're on camera, but I think that was a neighbor's property. So, but no, it is the lot of fill there. We've got some more to put down, and I think we still have a layer of the cap that needs to go on.
Then you can
but at
drive
the end
on
of the day,
It's close.
completely different site than what you had before. And again, we are looking to finalize that, get that done and turned around quickly so we can then turn around and sell that to the prospect. I do believe, again, through the attorneys, we have to hold the property for a certain amount of time once it's completed from an EPA standpoint.
I'm not sure if it comes from the EPA, but I mean, obviously there are a number of things to get straight, and EPA will have to tie up some bows on its end.
But if you have not been to the site,
Go over the
completely
bridge.
different.
If you go over the bridge and look
You can
down,
see it.
it's
It's right
it's
there.
amazing.
I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
Go back to
Yeah.
person on the road.
Yep.
And the bond issuance for the Northern Virginia thing, that closed and got done?
Yep. That's all set and all done, and we did hear, we certainly as a staff listened to the board. We have heard Mr. Reinenberg and Mr. Wallace say keep those types of opportunities coming. So we are looking for those opportunities regularly. We may have some more coming to the board.
Have we
here
seen any
soon.
income from that?
I mean, you're getting like point.
No, but I mean, I just haven't seen it show up.
It's
Not yet.
minor.
It's minor.
but
It's
something.
minor.
No, I don't have, I haven't seen it on the
Not yet.
financial.
I don't think it's popped up.
That's why I
It
was
doesn't
asking.
actually start until
Yeah,
next year,
next
right?
year. Next year. I'm trying to think from a year from the close.
Hey, Jim, could I just make a recommendation that on all our meetings under the old business category, that we kind of do a summary of actions where we stand on all these pet rocks?
We can. I would ask that the caveat just be that it may be the same as the month before. As long as you
That's
all are
fine.
fine with that, we have no problem putting that on the agenda.
I second that. It's a good idea.
Okay. Any other? Okay. Based upon that?